Oh, I was expecting something a little bit more different. Towering above any captive sent within its labyrinth, with strength great enough to render any armor useless, and horns as long and deadly as spears, the Minotaur is a deadly monster hailing from the shores of ancient Greece, namely the island of Crete. Originally, the monster was just a single creature, the result of some kinky interspecies relations thanks to the ocean god Poseidon. Those who know our ancient Greek gods well would probably attribute this union to Zeus, knowing of his own habits of transforming into animals and getting it on with the various mortal women. For once, it was not entirely the fault of Zeus doing the deed, but we shall delve into who did who soon enough. The ancient Greek depiction of the Minotaur showed it to have a body of a man topped with the head of a bull. As fantasy authors, movie directors, and other creative individuals used the Minotaur in their work, the monster began to stray away from this classical appearance. The body became covered in thick, coarse hair, the human feet being traded in for cow hooves, and other bone-vine additions are common in modern Minotaur designs. There is a lesser used appearance for the Minotaur, which, while not commonly used, is still worth noting. It is the reversal of the widely accepted configuration of a man and a bull, rather having the lower half of a bull and the upper half of a man. This would be similar to the appearance of a centaur, another human-animal hybrid monster from ancient Greek mythology. My personal favourite, however, is the proper, quote, reverse Minotaur, which is the monstrosity you all bore witness to at the beginning of this video. If you are wanting a good laugh, or some nightmare fuel, I would suggest image searching reverse Minotaur into Google or whatever other search engine you use. Despite their changing appearance throughout the years, there are key traits of the monster that remain the same, namely its large stature, its inhuman strength, and its unsatiated craving for flesh, mainly that of humans. Like most stories, this tale begins with a princess, namely Princess Europa of Phoenicia. The young princess would have her entire world turned upside down when she stumbles across a bull of the purest white by the seashore. Entranced by the bull's beauty, who behaved very calmly in her presence, she stroked the beast's sides and climbed upon its back. Once she did this, the bull stood up and ran towards the ocean and began to swim out to sea with the frightened princess still clinging on for dear life. The bull swam through the ocean until new land appeared, and there the duo landed on the island of Crete. There, the bull revealed his true identity to be Zeus, who has been enamored by the princess while he was doing god things, and came up with this crazy plan to get the princess alone with himself. As crazy of a plan as it was, it worked, and Zeus proceeded to do what he does best. Both he and Europa did the deed, to which she would later bear 3 sons from the union. Zeus does the typical thunder god thing and abandons Europa on the island he ferried her to, but she later becomes queen after she marries King Asterius of Crete. However, because Zeus literally banged the fertility out of her, Europa was unable to have any more children and left King Asterius with no direct lineage to the throne after he died. Whether this says anything about Zeus's sexual prowess or not, I'll leave it for you guys to decide. Europa's sons began to bicker with one another as to who would take the throne once King Asterius passed away. Minos would pray to his uncle, Poseidon, to send him a sign that the gods favoured him above his brothers for the throne. Poseidon heard his prayers, and answered them by sending a snow-white bull from the ocean's waves, to which was meant to be sacrificed back in Poseidon's name. This bull would be the physical definition of perfection, and would cause Minos to rethink slaughtering the bull. His compromise to this was to offer one of his own prized bulls in its stead, wanting to keep the snow-white bull for his own herd. Now, one would think that while you're living in a time where the gods tend to overreact to even the slightest of transgressions, you would hope to believe that Minos would have predicted that this swap of sweet bovine sacrifice would anger the ocean god. Unfortunately, hindsight is 20/20, and the now King Minos would fail to appease Poseidon with his meager offering, resulting in some questionable punishment. In a roundabout way of getting back at Minos, Poseidon made the now king's wife, Pasiphae, fall madly in love with the prize bull in question. The now lustful Pasiphae had the craftsman, Daedalus, create a hollow cow so that she may crawl inside of it and, well, let's just say she took the wagyu up the wazoo. She had a craving for some of that thick A5 great beef. She wanted to pork that, oh wait, wrong animal. She wanted to fuck a bull, okay? This pairing would produce our star for the video, the Minotaur, whom Pasiphae named Asterius. Kind of weird to name your punishment Monster Baby as if it was a normal child, especially after your husband's stepfather, but who am I to judge? After all, I'm a talking rat. As the final punishment, Poseidon caused the prize bull to go mad, taking on the rage that he had towards Minos, making it impossible for anyone to approach it. The Minotaur grew at a surprising rate and became more violent as it did so. To protect others from the Minotaur's wrath, King Minos ordered Daedalus to create the largest, most confusing labyrinth possible. This maze of interconnecting corridors would serve as the monster's prison, and almost serve Daedalus the same fate, as he was only just able to escape it himself, a testament to how effective this labyrinth is. After returning back to King Minos to inform him of the completed maze, Daedalus was immediately imprisoned by the king and locked away in a tower with his son, Icarus, in order to protect the secrets of the labyrinth. It wasn't until King Minos' first son, Prince Androgeus, was slain in Athens that the true horror of the Minotaur would be realized. While the exact account of Prince Androgeus' death is unknown, some saying it was the fault of a jealous competitor participating in the Pantheonic Games, or an accidental trampling by the enraged Marathonian bull who was a part of these games, or maybe even something in between, it was never made clear. And yes, the Marathonian bull is actually the same bull that is the father to the Minotaur, but we'll touch on that a little bit later. Regardless of the cause of death, King Minos was so enraged at the loss of his son that he travelled to Athens himself to get his revenge. Once he arrived, King Minos prayed to his father Zeus to punish the city of Athens, which he happily did in the form of famine and plague. During these plights, the Athenians were told by an oracle that the only way they could rid themselves of these events was to fulfill any request that King Minos asked for. King Minos requested 7 youths and 7 maidens to be sent out every 9 years to Crete and be fed to the Minotaur. While this did end the plague and famine for the city, it did leave the Athenians at the mercy to honour their agreement with King Minos, otherwise risking further plights. Once 3 cycles of these sacrifices were sent to Crete, Theseus arrived to Athens and requested a meeting with his father, King Aegeus. King Aegeus and Theseus had never met, the king leaving Theseus' mother while she was still pregnant with him. To know who Theseus was when he grew up, King Aegeus placed his sword under a huge rock, knowing that only his son would be able to claim it. King Aegeus' new wife, Medea, recognized the stranger was most likely Theseus, and she persuaded the king, who had still not recognized his son, that he should not trust this stranger. Medea suggested that he should be the one to capture the Marathonian bull, who is, as previously stated, the bull that is the father of the Minotaur. As to how it traversed the ocean from Crete to the mainland is thanks to Hercules, being that one of his 12 labours was to bring the bull to King Eurystheus of Tiryns. It would then later escape to the surrounding countryside and continue on its rampage as it did back in Crete. Medea hoped that when Theseus attempted to capture the enraged bull, that he would fail and be slain by it, leaving her own son, Medus, to be next in line to the throne. Despite the difficult task laid out before him, Theseus captured the bull and brought it back to Athens, to which he then sacrificed it in Athena's name. Despite this success, Medea still wanted Theseus dead, and so she poisoned a goblet of wine that was offered to him during the following celebrations. Lucky for Theseus, King Aegeus saw the young man's sword at his hip and realized that it was once his own sword that he left under that rock all those years ago. Knocking back the tainted wine, Theseus and King Aegeus were finally introduced as father and son. Medea fled to Asia after this botched assassination, with nothing much heard from her afterwards. After these events, Theseus volunteered to defeat the Minotaur in Crete to end the suffering of his people, being now recognized as a prince and as such has taken on a level of obligation to protect his people. He took the place of one of the 7 young men to be sent to the labyrinth, and journeyed to Crete on a ship that hoisted a black sail, letting his father know that if he were to return alive, the ship would change its sail to white, and if he were to fail and perish, the ship's sail would remain black. Once on the shore of Crete, King Minos' daughter, Ariadne, watched the boat of sacrifices walk off the vessel, being stripped of their weapons to prevent any retaliation. It was there that she saw Theseus and fell madly in love with the young man. She did not wish for Theseus to die at the hands of her half-brother, so she sought the advice from Daedalus, still imprisoned in the tower with his son. He suggested giving Theseus a ball of thread so that he may mark where he has travelled within the labyrinth. That night, Ariadne snuck Theseus to the entrance of the labyrinth. For her help, Theseus promised that when he returned to Athens, he would take Ariadne along with him. Delving deep into the twisted corridors laid out before him, Theseus reached the heart of the labyrinth, to which he saw the Minotaur sleeping amongst the remains of the last sacrifices sent from Athens. Before Theseus could slay the monster in its sleep, it awoke and a terrible battle ensued. Despite the monster's strength and size, Theseus was able to strangle the beast with just his bare hands, and thus ending the reign of terror this monster had over the Athenians. With the deed done, Theseus, along with Ariadne and the other Athenian sacrifices, returned back to the boat on which they came in. Having such a quick escape from Crete left the ship without basic supplies, and so Theseus had the ship land on an island so that they may rest and search for clean drinking water. The next morning, Theseus abandons Ariadne in her sleep, leaving her on the island of Naxos by herself. Despite the total dick move from Theseus, Ariadne's story has a happy ending to it, which begins with the wine god Dionysus discovering her on the island, to which he is a protector of. The god falls in love with the mortal and marries her, and thus granting her godhood. Back to Theseus, who was in such a big rush abandoning the swooning princess he had promised to take with him, forgot to change the black sails to white as he returned back to Athenian waters. King Aegeus, believing this to be the agreed upon sign of his son's death, took his own life by casting himself off a cliff and into the sea below, thus causing this body of water to be known as the Aegean Sea from that point onwards. The most likely explanation of the myth of the Minotaur would be around the time Crete was one of the big powers in the region. Athens and the surrounding cities of Greece would have likely been under tribute to Crete, having to pay money or other valuables to prevent the unwanted attention of the Cretan navy. It is thought that young men and women were also given as tribute to Crete to be sacrificed to their bull deities. With bull worship being really popular in Crete at the time, the priests of these cults would wear bull masks or heads while performing the ritual killing of their captives. Tales of these events would eventually make their way back to the mainland via merchants, warriors, or others who would have an excuse to travel to Crete and witness these sacrifices. As most stories that are told orally back in these days, they had the unfortunate tendency to slowly change over each telling. So tales of priests wearing bull masks sacrificing young men and women turned into a flesh-eating, half-bull, half-man monster. Another possible explanation of the origins of the Minotaur was how the Cretans explained the cause of earthquakes. Most cultures do a similar thing, where they tell stories to explain natural events, such as thunderstorms, tsunamis, and droughts. For the Cretes, the bellowing and the rumbling beneath them was logically the fault of the Minotaur, who dwelt in the labyrinth beneath their feet. Being that geological evidence proves that the island of Crete was tectonically active at the time of the myth's possible creation, does offer a strong argument to the theory, but like a lot of these things that are dating this far back in our history, it's hard to say for certain. While not receiving the same popularity that elves, dwarves, and orcs have obtained in popular culture these days, the Minotaur still holds its own special place in the fantasy setting. They are used mostly as an evil monster, one that the heroes need to overcome to save the day, though there are occasions where Minotaurs are the heroes of their own stories, or at least act as an ally on the side of good. Kraz the Minotaur from the Dragonlance novels is a particularly good example of a hero Minotaur. Despite the well-known story of the Minotaur, the monster has become less used in modern culture. D&D seems to be where the monster has maintained its hold of relevancy, and even then, it is a rarely used monster, at least in all the games I have played or watched. The Minotaur does occasionally show up in movies, books, and video games, although it's almost always as a bad guy or a race. They end up being fodder for the heroes to carve a name out for themselves, or as the big bad that the hero must overcome to save the day. Unlike other fantasy creatures, Minotaurs have not undergone a cultural change to keep up with the current times. They linger between the old world and the new, having not been forgotten, yet not quite remembered. And with that, we conclude our video for today. I would like to know what are your thoughts about the Minotaur, be it the original myth, the D&D monster, or somewhere else the monster is mentioned. Leave your thoughts in comments down below. I would be really interested to see what you guys think. If you've enjoyed this video, consider giving it a like. And if you want to see more of my videos, hit the subscribe button and the bell icon so you won't miss out on any new videos I release. If you want to keep up to date with all my projects, I post everything I release on Twitter, so consider following me there. If you want to see a specific monster in the next episode of Mythic Monsters, let me know down in the comments below. I hope you all have a good rest of your day, and thank you all for watching. Until next time. Oh, I'm sorry. I think we might have had a misunderstanding here. I asked you to find the inner secrets of the maze, not the maze. I'm not even gonna lie, I didn't even know we had a maze around these parts, let alone a resident Minotaur. Say, I know what will fix your sour mood. It is a well-known fact that us maze farmers have the best sense of humour around these parts. Here, let me tell you a joke that went around last harvesting season. What do you call the best student at corn school? The acorn. Oh, you didn't like that one? Oh. Well, that's okay, I got a few more for you. Here, how's this one sound? How is an ear of corn like an army? Because it has many kernels. Not even a smile. Okay, you're a really hard nut to crack there, friend. But don't you worry none. I have plenty more jokes to tell, and I'm sure one of them will eventually get you. Here, how about this one? What has ears, but cannot hear? A field of corn. But seriously, the fields do have ears, so don't be saying anything you shouldn't be. My wife was mighty cross with me one day after I cussed out her horrible cooking. The damn corn dobbed me in, I tell you. All this talk about corn made me think of another joke. How's this one sound? What did the baby corn say to the mama corn? Where's my popcorn?